I came in thinking I knew everything about how to run this type of business that I had sold to them. And as I started to realize and started to research that no, I didn't know anything. I knew how to run my business in my very,
Right.
very tiny 1,500 person niche of client base, but it was not anything to where what was out there in the world. And that's when I started to read Patrick Lencioni's books. I read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I read Good to Great and Built to Last by Jim Collins, and all of the great business books that through there. And that's when I started to realize that, oh wait, there's other ways to do things. And it became very interesting. I was like, how do you make a great company from the get-go, kind of like in Built to Last, but then keep it going beyond what that he even talks about in some of his other books?
Well, hello, and welcome back to the Amanda Kaufman Show. And we are continuing our series on the coaches that don't suck. I am so excited to have you here today, Jason.
Thank you, Amanda. Appreciate being on the show.
Love it. Well, dear listener, with over 30 years as a CEO, serial entrepreneur, and business coach, Jason Pond has scaled and sold multiple businesses, experiencing firsthand the challenges and rewards of entrepreneurship. Now he helps driven clients turn challenges into big wins using the same principles that have guided Jason's own successful exits. So, Jason, I'm so excited to have you here on the podcast. I'm so curious, like, maybe just take 30 seconds and update us on, like, what are you working on now and who are you focused on helping?
Yeah, Amanda, great question. I am focused on helping the small business, service-based business, a lot in the broadband industry to help grow past the ceilings that are holding them back and kind of break through with the same spots where I was. I would love to be able to help them pop their egos, just like I was able to get my ego popped back in 2016 and started to figure out coaching and joining a coaching program in 2018 and going to forward. So I do holistic business-based coaching. I focus on 5 pillars that I created around the system of your 4 standard pillars of business, and then adding in that self-development piece. And we do it in a community-based setting where we're meeting every week and we're continuing conversations, and it is just having a fantastic way to facilitate these service-based businesses and give them a spot to ask questions, just like they would at like a trade show or a conference where they're going to learn information about what's going on. They get to do it every single week.
I love that. That's so great. And, you know, the momentum that you've got with your business right now, I think is going to be very inspiring to a lot of our listeners, because we have a lot of listeners who are just starting out with their coaching business. They've got kind of their first few clients. And I'm always really excited to have a, fellow business owner who has some significant business experience to just kind of like shine a light on some of the things that maybe we could be doing differently as coaches. This is the Coaches That Don't Suck segment. So I am really curious, like you mentioned 2016 was the time that your ego got popped. Tell us more about that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so what happened was I was that technician, if you've ever read the E-Myth, and I had
Oh my
sold
God, I
my
love that book.
business. Yeah, so I had sold my business at that time, and I went to work for a company that was a little bit of a train wreck. And
Mm.
there was a lot of projects off track. There was a lot of cooks, and there's a lot of cooks in the kitchen per se, if we're going to use some analogies today. And I came in thinking I knew everything about how to run this type of business that I had sold to them. And as I started to realize and started to research that no, I didn't know anything. I knew how to run my business in my very,
Right.
very tiny 1,500 person niche of client base, but it was not anything to where what was out there in the world. And that's when I started to read Patrick Lencioni's books. I read The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. I read Good to Great and Built to Last by Chip Collins, and all of the great business books that through there. And that's when I started to realize that, oh, wait, there's other ways to do things. And it became very interesting. I was like, how do you make a great company from the get-go, kind of like in Built to Last, but then keep it going beyond what he even talks about in some of his other books.
Love this. And I'm a big reader as well. Like, if you were to chat with, say, somebody who's starting their very first online business, they want to coach other people. You mentioned that there were like 5 pillars that you teach from. What would you say is like the top wisdom that you would share now that you've spent so much time with so many different businesses? What do you think a coach should make sure they're doing?
I made the biggest mistake that a lot of coaches make, and that is you get a couple of really good big clients in and you stop selling. Don't stop selling. Like
Never stop selling.
Yeah, never stop selling. And if it means you have to grind it out, like a lot of times we see coaches jump into this because they want to get out of the corporate grind, right? They go from corporate into coaching. And I've watched those guys, and they'll jump in, they'll get a few clients, and then they'll back way off. Right? They stop selling inside of it. So that's definitely the biggest element to it, is don't stop selling. Keep that pipeline full, even if you have to delay onboarding a new client. Like that was something that I didn't realize. I was like, I got to start serving them tomorrow if they sign up. No, they can agree to sign up, and you can start serving them in 2 months and build
1,000%. Yeah. And like mechanically, when I'm doing that, I just take a deposit, and we get the agreement done. So then it's like, okay, there's some commitment here. And then, we can pick up a little bit later. I love this. Like, so I myself came from corporate. I myself had that exact same experience. I got about 18 months into the game, and I had 16 private clients. I'm meeting with them for full day intensives. I'm meeting with them every single week, and I just found myself time poor. And I found my cash flow got way out of whack because I kept investing in getting more help and more support. In retrospect, very prematurely. So if anybody has not read Profit First by Mike Michalowicz, anytime this subject comes up, I'm pretty much recommending that book. But the E-Myth is a really good one too. I think one of the biggest transitions that I had to make to enable me to sell all the time and keep that process going and keep that process sustainable for the level of capacity that I actually had for both time and money, it required me to kind of take the coach hat, just turn it down a little bit and turn up I'm a CEO, I'm a founder, I'm an entrepreneur hat, and like really embody that. And it fundamentally changed a lot of the decisions I was making. I'm really curious, like, what do you do to keep your pipeline full? How do you keep that spark alive for pipelining?
It's challenging, but because I've been in that spot, I've been in that spot of it was completely dry. I had a very big coaching client, and we were working, 6-figure ticket, private coaching client. And it was I'd put all my effort into them, didn't have a pipeline. All of a sudden it was like, well, we're done here. We don't need to continue this conversation. I'd coached him up to a point where I couldn't help him anymore. And then I moved on. It was time to move on. And then I looked out and I went, oh, I have lots of good runway, but when I'm looking at that runway, I'm going, it's getting tight. And remembering that is what keeps me going on doing reach outs, and, joining a program. So myself, just as I've met you, I joined a coaching program so that I was being coached also, right? And I'm getting pushed and driven every week, similar style program, but I'm getting pushed every week. Like, are you doing the opens? Are you reaching out and getting those pipelines going? And that helps keep motivated because there's accountability around it. If you don't have an accountability partner, chances are you're not going to do it, because as humans, we are designed to conserve energy.
1000%. Yes. But at the same time, we're also like biologically wired for social connection and maintaining our status in the tribe, right? So, I still have like behind the computer here my 5 daily non-negotiables, and I've got an accountability meeting later today with members of that coaching program, and it's like if I show up to that call and I'm not posting to social media 3 times a day, and I'm not doing 5 opens, and I'm not taking 45 minutes for my movement and my body and myself, and I'm not reading, like I feel like a schmuck, like I think that a lot of times, and I'd love your coachy perspective on this, a lot of times people allow pain to become the brakes, right? So the pain, you strike me as a bit of a techie whiz, or, like a technical expert. And I'm kind of the same way. I'm super happy reading. I love doing my journaling. Like, I'm probably one of those people that if there was kind of an apocalypse situation and I had to like live in a cave for a year, I'd be good, like I would be okay. But coaching is a social game, right? And I'm always telling my clients, like, coaching is ultimately a relationship. So even if you personally really enjoy that solitude, or you identify as an introvert, the choice to coach means you're making a choice to be good at relationships. So, the way I've done it is I've looked at it as a skill like anything else. And I've worked on skill all the way from, meeting strangers to, sparking conversations and relationship with those strangers, to nurturing those relationships forward and so on, so that I always have a consistent pipeline of collaborators, a consistent pipeline of clients, a consistent pipeline, of affiliates. Like, it's, in my business anyway, I've got like 5 different pipelines. I even have a pipeline for potential suppliers that might, come in. And do you have any idea how many people have pitched to fix my YouTube channel, right? So my first move that I do with them is I invite them to fill out a form to be a preferred supplier. So then when I need to tap that pipeline, I'm going to go to the people that take the time to do a form as like the first opportunity to do that work.
I love that. I'm implementing that like this week. So that was fantastic.
Do it, right? Yeah. You know why I did it is because I hated doing like DM outreach, because I knew that I was going to get pitch slapped with things that I wasn't ready to buy. And it was getting in the way of me building like authentic relationships. So I was like, you know what? If I can have an authentic response to that invitation, then I can gracefully dismount the conversation, and I can, again, pick the conversation up when I'm good and ready to. So yeah, it really helped with my outreach.
That sounds great. Absolutely, on that side.
Yeah, I love it. So Jason, like, how do you go about doing your lead generation and everything? I think a lot of coaches, I've actually just recently ran a survey for our audience, and the I would say the number one thing that came back was this desire to attract people who were interested in buying coaching. And I think what's really wonderful about having you here on the show is your audience isn't other coaches necessarily. It's small business owners. So how do you go about like building the initial, like the early pipeline with the marketing to generate the leads that you can then reach out to?
So I've gone a couple of different ways, and one of the ways is working really well is I created a cold email outreach that went out and solicited people to be on my podcast, and that generated, it was just a matter of, what I was looking for was referral partners on that, through that. And it's kind of morphed a little bit to, I love having the conversation with them. I'm getting to learn a lot about different businesses that support small businesses, such as digital marketing agencies, other coaches, and various different, I do holistic business coaching, but I've talked to sales coaches and marketing coaches and, other life coaches, mindset coaches, various different people that support small businesses. And so I've used that to help gain into a referral network. I'm also doing a lot on LinkedIn and getting a lot of engagement and reach out on there. I've added Instagram here in the last couple of months, so I'm starting to do some more reach outs.
Yeah, hard not to in that coaching program.
Yeah, thanks to that one. And I've done a lot of direct, and I'm actually attending the industry trade shows also and having conversations. I come from the industry though, so I was in this industry for 20 years before I decided to start coaching in the industry. And
Hmm.
and so I have a lot of vendor relationships. I have a lot of other relationships with other providers that were inside of the industry. And I was able to go and sit and have conversations with them and just continue to foster relationships, right? And that's all it is just continuing to foster a relationship until the point of which they have that click in the mind. Like, I wonder, would this work for me? Which can open the sales conversation for us to have, and then eventually close a deal and get them into the community.
I really appreciate that very detailed answer because I think a lot of people kind of have this expectation when they're starting. I know I certainly did that when I get the certification, I'll hang my shingle and then like my calendar is going to be completely flooded. I was actually really nervous about that. But the hilarious thing is, at the time, I had 8 people in my immediate network that I felt comfortable saying, like, hey, so I'm starting a new thing. Maybe like you might want to try it, And I was so shy and so bashful, but like, I think that beginner overwhelm is just thinking that you are going to launch the website and all of a sudden you're going to go viral and like there's going to be this
This
huge
total
onslaught.
total fear of success, right? I mean, that was like
Totally.
I hesitated and hesitated and hesitated as I wrapped up a contract with my previous company that I sold. I was like, oh, I can't launch yet. I'm going to get inundated, and I don't. I got to be able to serve the customer. I got to be able to serve the customer, and or the client in the coaching
Fully.
case. And yeah, the same thing. Like, got the certification, put it up there, decided to post it in one spot, and thought that this is going to get lots of views. I have yet, in 2.5 years, I have yet to actually get a client from that one posting that came up. Everything else has been through other
Yeah,
outreach.
exactly. Like I think the big kind of bubble that we're popping here is just bursting the bubble of like just taking out an ad is enough, or taking out the website is enough, or sending one email is enough. It's like, no, no, no. What does it take for other people to get into relationship with you? Like really look at that. So I was talking about the onslaught of people doing outreach to optimize my YouTube channel, which by the way is very slowly and surely working because we have done a lot of optimizations on that YouTube. I'm probably going to hire sometime soon, but that's actually a really good point. Is like I've been getting outreached by dozens of these people that are offering to do this optimization, and so, what is it naturally doing? It's naturally causing my brain to go, maybe I should do that. Maybe that is something I might consider doing. And there's that top of mindness. Now, a lot of those vendors are not going to get my business because I never see them again. They don't have a social presence. They're not reminding me that they're there. They're not reaching out again after I say my initial no, right? And by the way, if you're watching this and you're this far into the episode, mention the episode and then I'll know for sure that you're serious about making a relationship here. And like I think a lot of coaches don't realize just how much they push the world out and away and require so much of others to have relationship with them, and then they're super surprised when it's the same out in the world.
Yeah. Oh, it's
Yeah,
great,
yeah.
great, great perspective.
Yeah, totally. And I think what I also really appreciated about your answer is that, you used your past relationships. Like I'm a coach that didn't, but like you're probably like, I don't know the size of your business, but you're probably much further along than I was at 2.5 years because I was requiring that I start from the tiny list, and I was requiring that I do all networking to build my relationships. And I had all these constraints and requirements, and I wasn't tapping into that past network, and I wasn't, so it was all starting from scratch. So it's like if we just assumed our businesses were roughly the same size at this point, you can get to the size you want to get to even if you don't have a big network you can reach out to, but just expect that that's going to take a lot more time, right? And if you give yourself
Yeah.
permission to access the network, that's pretty huge. Okay, what was one thing that surprised you when you pivoted from traditional business and into coaching specifically?
Ooh, that is a really great question. The one thing that surprises me the most, and it surprises me and frustrates me, and I
Mm,
haven't figured out the best way, but that is I thought a lot more people would be interested in coaching.
Yeah.
And it's like, I got interested in coaching. And so I thought because I was interested in coaching, everybody else was going to be interested in coaching. And the surprising thing is that a lot of society today cannot look past the end of their nose. It, a
Yeah,
little bit
I
of
think
it,
there's a lot of
call it,
suspicion in people volunteering to help, and it's like, what's that going to cost me? You know, and there's also like a lot of this fierce independence. No, I can do it myself, right?
yeah, I can do it myself. I don't need the help. That technician mentality and of like, if I have to do it better than anybody else, I'm the only one that can do it better than anybody else, right? So it's, to be able to crack the code of and get into the people that are willing to start to look outside for help and realize that by looking outside for help, they actually propel their businesses sometimes 10x faster than if they're just sitting down and grinding them.
That's for sure been my experience. It's one of the reasons that I love supporting coaches because I know that the actual product of coaching, especially when done well, can be such an amplifier, and it can also increase the quality of what you do, and it can reduce so much cost as well, right? Because if you kind of think about stumbling around in the woods without a map, right? Versus working with a coach, even if the coach is not prescribing the map per se, they're just helping you slow down and make higher quality decisions according to your value system. Something as, relatively simple as that can cost you so much less in the long run because you're not, again, stumbling around in the dark and not evaluating your options properly. So
Yeah.
that's so cool. All right. I love to ask this question on this segment. Jason, what do you think are 3 things that help a coach not to suck?
3 things that help a coach not to suck.
Yes.
Inside of coaching, when you're in the program, 3 things are they are listening more than they're talking.
Oh, good.
So the objective is just to be able to learn from your clients and find those spots where there is the nuances to help guide the conversation because really we're guiding them to the answer that they already have. They just don't,
Exactly.
they're not willing to admit they know it, right? So there's one.
Totally.
2 would be it's very hard to give a direct feedback. And people don't like to get direct feedback, but a coach that doesn't give direct feedback is not doing you justice.
So true. Yeah,
It's,
absolutely.
and
That took me a few
it
years.
can be very painful inside of it.
Mhm.
And I would say 3, that they're willing to go out of their way to support you and push you in ways that your friends and family or others would never do.
I love
They're
that.
willing to say like they're willing to really say like and tell you the hard things that
Hmm.
just aren't a matter of it of what especially your friends might tell you at a Friday night party, which you shouldn't be at if you're trying to run a business, by the way. You should be trying to run your business and not partying. But
Hmm.
it's your friends might tell you, but your family would never tell you that you need to not be doing 35 things. You need to focus on one part of your business.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I'm a certified high performance coach, and that's with the High Performance Institute, led by Brendan Burchard. And I think the poor man had to say they pay you to push only about 30 times before I was like, right, right, okay, and I had to find like my way of pushing that was congruent because ultimately it is a relationship, but I think that that's a very important for any coach to do, rather than just be another body, another warm body in the person's network.
Yeah.
So good. So Jason, if people wanted to keep up with what you're up to or follow you, what's the best way to do that?
Best way to do it is on Instagram. It's at Mountain Freedom Coach. And if they want to DM me AK for Amanda Kaufman, I will get them a free 1 hour coaching session.
Standing. That's amazing. And I mean, y'all, 30 years of business experience. This dude knows what he's talking about. I would definitely take him up on that. And listener, don't forget to subscribe. If you've loved this episode, make sure you smash that subscribe button on wherever you're listening to. And you know what? If you just take a few minutes to do a review, leave us 5 stars. Jason worked really hard on this episode. Leave us 5 stars so that other coaches are going to find this episode and find the utility out of it. And in fact, you probably know 3 people who would really benefit from this conversation. If they're like, stutter stepping and not getting started with their sales, or they had some initial success, but they're not keeping their consistency. Who are 3 people that would really benefit from this short conversation about how to stay connected with your coaching business? Thank you so much for joining us, Jason.
Thank you, Amanda. It has been such a pleasure to have a great conversation.
Amazing. Thank you, listener, and we'll see you on the next episode.